What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at your 2022 Stanley Cup champions. We have a new champ in town. It's the Colorado Avalanche. We're going to take a look at their journey through the Stanley Cup playoffs this season, through the regular season. And, just to give a little inspiration for you guys, I'm going to go over a couple of players on this team and the journey that it's taken for them to get here. So we're going to go over all of that today. So the Colorado Avalanche, after an incredible season, picking up 119 points during the regular season, 72 wins, including the Stanley Cup playoffs, 56 wins during the regular season. The Colorado Avalanche have won the Stanley Cup. They had a very interesting path all the way to the Stanley Cup final. They were by far and away throughout the playoffs the best team, considering how they fared against their other matchups. They did not play a Game 7 at all in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and you could argue that had something to do with it, right? They were one of the teams that, you could say, oh, well, they didn't, play every night and this and that, but they were so good, they didn't have to play those games. So, all the way back to their first round matchup, they play the Nashville Predators, who had just snuck into the playoffs, and they swept the Nashville Predators in the first round. And right off the bat, you knew Nashville was going to have a hard time against these guys, but this was the beginning of what we were going to see from Colorado throughout the postseason. We go into the second round against the St. Louis Blues. They were the last team to win the Stanley Cup before the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2019, and they kind of took care of them pretty quick. I mean, they lost Game 5, which made them have to win it in 6, but Colorado was pretty dominant in that second round series as well. Then they go to the conference finals, the Western Conference Finals, against the Edmonton Oilers, who pretty much handled the Calgary Flames, beat them in 5 games in the second round. The big battle of Alberta, the Oilers would not win a game in the conference finals. They shut down McKinnon, they shut down McDavid, they shut down Draisaitl, and they pretty much torched the Oilers the same way they did the Predators in the first round. And then they get to the Stanley Cup final. Had it not been for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and had it been the Rangers or Carolina, no disrespect to those other teams in the East, but Colorado probably would have steamrolled them in 4 or 5 games as well. And the only reason this went to 6 was because it's the Tampa Bay Lightning. And how fitting is it that this series, it's a shame that the Avalanche couldn't win it at home, right? Ideally, you win the Cup in Denver, at your home arena. But I think it's more fitting that they won it in Tampa, because the last 2 years, Tampa Bay won the Cup in 2020 in the playoff bubble, right? They won it in the bubble, and in 2021, they did win it at home last year. So it's kind of fitting that 2 years in a row, the Stanley Cup is given in Amalie Arena, except this time it wasn't for the Bolts. It was to the Avalanche, and it's kind of symbolically the passing of the torch of this Tampa Bay Lightning dynasty. Well, some would argue if it even is a dynasty, because they didn't win those 3 cups in a row. But you look at the Avalanche, kind of the next heir to the throne as the quote-unquote top team in the National Hockey League. Looking back to the end of last season when the Cup was given to the Lightning, the Colorado Avalanche had the best odds of winning the Stanley Cup this year, and they ended up fulfilling that. You look at the journey that this Avalanche team has been. I mean, throughout the playoffs, you guys were upset that I said they didn't face much adversity. I mean, they were just the better team in every series. They really didn't face much adversity. They did have a couple of injuries, right? The Nazem Kadri situation, especially in that St. Louis series. He gets hit by, who was that, Lucic or Evander Kane in the conference finals against Edmonton. He comes back. And we'll get to that in a little bit more on Kadri. But that was really the only adversity they had faced. Most of the adversity comes from last year when they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in the playoffs, right? There was a lot of frustration. It was 3 straight years that the Avalanche had gotten to the second round and couldn't get past the second round, right? That's the argument that I said to Avs fans this year, Hey, you know what? Get past the second round. That was always the thing, the go-to kind of gut punch to the Avalanche, and they were able to break that open this year. and they went all the way, and they did what they had to do. You look at this team, I mean, this is a stacked hockey team. And you also have to remember, they did a lot of this without one of their top defensemen, Sammy Girard, which is really impressive. And again, Nazem Kadri was out during it, throughout points this series, even in the end of the, he didn't play for the rest of the conference finals. Again, it was a short-lived series, but he was out, right? Nazem Kadri, so a top-tier center, losing a top-4 defenseman, and the Avalanche just kind of just buzzed through everybody like that didn't even matter. What I think is so interesting is you Avs fans were very on me for giving Tampa Bay winning this series, and I was wrong. You guys should be happy. You should be thanking me because I probably jinxed the Lightning in that scenario. But listen, I mean, I think you guys saw, considering this went to 6 games, Tampa Bay is a very good hockey team. And if it hadn't been for anybody, if it was the Rangers or Carolina or anybody else, I would have picked Colorado. But the only reason I picked Tampa is because they're the Tampa Bay Lightning, right? This would have been their 3rd straight cup. And it would have been hard to knock them off. But the fact Colorado was able to win this series, let alone winning games in Tampa, winning that overtime game in Game 4, that was a critical win for them. That's really what put this series away, was that Game 4. But give Tampa credit, they came in, played well in Game 5. Vasi played well, in this elimination game. He only gave up 2 goals. It's just Tampa only scored 1 at the end of the day. Darcy Kemper, is he a good goaltender? Is he good enough to get Colorado to the promised land? You got that question answered the other day. So this is what the Avalanche are, right? They proved a lot of people wrong. And that's what I want to get to here at the end of the video, is going over some of the guys that the adversity that they have faced. Devon Toews, guys, I remember watching him with the Bridgeport Sound Tigers 5 years ago. And I remember saying, why hasn't Garth Snow, the former Islanders GM, why hasn't he called this guy up, right? Devon Toews is so talented with the puck. He's such a great skater. He's able to move the puck up. He comes up to the Islanders, is an incredible piece for the Islanders. And I think one of the reasons the Islanders have not been so good is because they haven't had Devon Toews. I think that was a huge loss for the Islanders. Devon Toews gets traded for 2 second-round picks. That's it. And he could have been in the Norris conversation as much as Cale Makar was this season. Devon Toews, he spent his dues, he spent his time in the American Hockey League. He played at Quinnipiac University for a while, and he was kind of an overager. And he comes into the NHL and is a star, and look at what he is now. Number 7 was able to lift the Stanley Cup the other day. It was bittersweet for me as an Islander fan, because I would have rather seen Devon Toews lift the cup as a member of the New York Islanders, but I am happy for him personally for winning the championship, because he definitely deserved it. He has been so good. He's been incredible when he came to Colorado, and even before that, he has been very good. And I think Avalanche fans at the time were like, okay, why did we trade 2 second-round picks for this guy? You're seeing how good he is now. And Islanders fans were very disappointed that they couldn't keep him. Moving on, the captain, Gabe Landeskog. Talk about a triumphant career. He was one of the youngest captains in NHL history when he was named the captain of the Avalanche. 4 seasons ago, they were the worst team in the National Hockey League. And you look at Landeskog now, I mean, he has been through the ringer with this team. He's been there for quite some time, and he has finally gotten his chance to win the Stanley Cup. So it's just huge for Landeskog. He's dealt with some injuries here and there. He's dealt with some consistency issues. I made a video last summer. Could he be leaving the team in free agency to go to the Islanders, to Boston? And a year later, look at this. He's won a Stanley Cup in Denver. So just absolutely incredible, that whole storyline. Same thing for Nathan MacKinnon, right? He's been kind of the, what's the best way to describe MacKinnon, right? He's a guy that's been there. He's from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, so the expectations right there are very high. Considering his friendly competition with Sidney Crosby. So the fact he was able to overcome disappointment. You guys remember that press conference last year, how disappointed he was with how the season ended. That stupid question in the post-game interview. You guys could look that up. That was incredible. I still can't believe that was... I wonder if that guy even has a job still. Probably. Just really weird question, and I think that just ticked off, personally, Nathan MacKinnon, but the entire Avalanche organization. And And Nathan MacKinnon now is a Stanley Cup champion, which is just well deserved, right? He's definitely paid his dues, very similar to Gabe Landeskog. He's been there through the rough days of this team when they were one of the worst teams in NHL history, and now they are creating history, winning the Stanley Cup. One of the most exciting guys, one of the guys I'm most happy for winning the Stanley Cup. Being an Anaheim Ducks fan, I'm very happy to see Andrew Cogliano win that Stanley Cup. He's played over 1,400 games in the National Hockey League, had one of the longest Ironman streaks in NHL history as well. He spent a couple seasons with Dallas, right? He was there with them in that stinger when they lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2020 in the bubble. So I'm really happy for Cogs. He's able to get a Stanley Cup. I would have rather him done that in Anaheim, but I'm very happy for him personally. Again, similar to Devon Tays, it's bittersweet, but I am happy he did win the Stanley Cup. He's one of the most underrated players in the National Hockey League, and even at the age he is, he's such a workhorse, and I'm very happy for Cogs winning a Stanley Cup. Darcy Kuemper. I mean, everybody forgets where Darcy Kuemper came from. He was in the desert with the Arizona Coyotes, right? This is a guy that at a point they couldn't give away, right? Darcy Kuemper was a guy 3 or 4 years ago. People were like, is he even an NHL goaltender? He stuck it out in Arizona. He had a great season last year. Colorado was very criticized for that trade last summer, right? Because they lost Philip Grubauer last summer. He ends up signing in Seattle. He ends up going for the bag instead of trying to win the championship. You have to wonder what Philip Grubauer is thinking right now in Seattle. He took the bag, and he probably sacrificed a chance to win a Stanley Cup here. But Darcy Kuemper, it costed what? A first-round pick, a second-round pick, Connor Timmins. It was pretty expensive for the Avalanche. And Joe Sakic, that was one of the first trades we said, did Sakic kind of get fleeced? A year later, it doesn't really matter, right? Because at the end of the day, the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. So I'm sure they're fine giving up Connor Timmins. I'm sure they're fine giving up the first and second round picks and whatever else it costed to get Kuemper, because he's going to have a ring on his finger. And that was all on the hands of picking up a solid goaltender. Sometimes you have to overpay. And especially a position like goaltending, it was definitely worth it for the Avalanche. Looking back, you guys could go back to that video. You know, a lot of people, trying to think of his name, the guy up in Vancouver, Lego Rocks, he was talking about, is this the first trade Sakic kind of got fleeced? And other people were talking about it, the hockey guy, all those guys, they were, including me, we were all saying this is a guy that they might have overpaid for. But like I said, they won the Stanley Cup, and nobody really remembers that now. Speaking of other trades, I mean, a piece of the Matt Duchene trade, right? Remember all the adversity a couple years ago? He wanted out of Colorado, he wanted out of Denver, and they ended up getting, sending him to the Ottawa Senators, and that pick ended up becoming, one of those draft picks, ended up becoming Bowen Byram. And Bowen Byram has had an interesting NHL, an interesting start to his NHL career, right? This is a guy now that is still very young. He's been playing in the WHL with Vancouver, the Vancouver Giants. There was talks around the deadline. Could the Canucks try and swing a trade for him, right? That was in the works. That was a potential food for thought last year. I remember making those videos last summer. And now he's a Stanley Cup champion at a very young age, at 19 or 20 years old. So congrats there to Bowen Byram. And he's had it kind of tough, right? Last year was not his best season. He was scratched a lot of this season. He had a hard time adjusting to the NHL game. So congratulations there to Byram. He's had some injuries. He definitely got roughed up in these playoffs. Teams were definitely targeting Bowen Byram. After the whistle, little cheap shots here and there, they were attacking him. And again, that kind of leads us into one of his line mates, which was Erik Johnson. Very similar to MacKinnon and Landeskog. He's been here for a long time. He's been here for a decade in Colorado. So I'm really happy for Erik Johnson. He has been a workhorse, a grinder. He said in his in the post-game interviews on the ice, last summer he wasn't sure if he was even going to be able to play this season. And here we are a year later, and he is a Stanley Cup champion in Colorado. He's been there through the tough days. He's been there through the grind and the grueling times. He's been there the last 3 years of disappointment. 4 or 5 years ago when they were one of the worst teams in NHL history. Again, shout out to Erik Johnson on an incredible career. And if he does hang up the skates, he will go off a Stanley Cup champion if that's what he decides to do. Continuing along with that, we have Jack Johnson, the other Johnson, on the Colorado Avalanche. Talk about a career. I mean, he has been through the blender personally as an NHL player. I remember him in Columbus. He was a pretty good defenseman, right? But he was with the Jackets during the low days in Columbus, so he wasn't there when they were doing a little bit better. He ends up getting sent to the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was with the Penguins organization. He was with the Rangers at the end of last year. He has been just through it all, and his contracts have been criticized. He's not a good player, this and that. And Jack Johnson is a Stanley Cup champion. He's had a long NHL career, a respected veteran in the sport. So I'm happy to see Jack Johnson get that cup ring. Val Nichushkin. I mean, talk about, again, more adversity. Guys, this is a growing theme, right? Val Nichushkin lost his NHL job with the Dallas Stars. He ended up going overseas, and he ended up coming back to sign with the Colorado Avalanche. The Dallas Stars had basically said, you're not worth your contract. You're not good enough. You can't score in this league. He ends up going overseas. He comes back, and again, he's going to get paid this summer as an unrestricted free agent likely. Val Nichushkin is a really good hockey player. He's going to get a good number. And for how big he is just such a great skater. And again, dealt with the adversity in Dallas, comes to Colorado, a divisional rival, and wins a Stanley Cup. So congratulations there to Val. Darren Helm, this is not the first time he's won a Stanley Cup. Yes, he was with the Detroit Red Wings during the tail end of their dynasty with the Mike Babcock era there in Detroit in the 2000s. Darren Helm has not won a Stanley Cup since that time in Detroit with Lidstrom and Kronwall and Datsuk. And all those guys, Zetterberg, right? So really exciting to see Darren Helm get another championship ring. Again, talk about a grinder. Just everybody hates Darren Helm, but he is a workhorse. He works hard. And you watch how long his NHL career is. I mean, he's been able to outlast a lot of guys just because of how hard he works. And it does go a long way. And then the last guy we have to get to, and here come the Leaf fans. They're going to be upset about this one. Another Stanley Cup given out. Another former Leaf winning the Stanley Cup. In 2019, it was Tyler Bozak, right, with the St. Louis Blues. In 2020 and 2021, it was Zach Bogosian, right? Zach Bogosian was with the Leafs for a little bit. Zach Bogosian was one of those guys. And then this season, it's Nazem Kadri winning the Stanley Cup. He was basically written off in Toronto. He's the first Muslim to win a Stanley Cup, which is very nice to see. The way he left Toronto, Dubas and Toronto said, we can't keep this guy. He's too much of a liability. He's not available to us in the postseason. He's too undisciplined. Hopefully he figures it out in Colorado. Yeah, he's more than figured it out in Colorado. He is a Stanley Cup champion, and you could have argued he could have been a Conn Smythe winner had it not been for the heroics of the other guys on this team that are Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon. With how good Kadri was this season, he was still third in my opinion, for who could have won the Conn Smythe. That is how good the other two guys were. And we already talked about MacKinnon, but Cale Makar winning the Conn Smythe for most valuable player this season. Congratulations there to Cale. This is a unbelievable hockey player, and had he not been injured last year, he would have won the Norris Trophy last season, hands down. Again, not a shot at Adam Fox necessarily. It's just showing how good of a player Cale Makar is. And the fact he was even in the finalist conversation last year, despite missing like 20-plus games, just shows you how good he is. Personally, I have to say here, I'm happy the Avalanche won the Cup. Being an Islander fan, the last 2 years, it's been rough watching Tampa be the only team the Islanders just couldn't get their fingers around and kind of get a grip on. And you know what? I don't want them touching the Islanders dynasty. I don't want there to be another dynasty. The Islanders were the last real dynasty that we've seen, winning 4 back-to-back Stanley Cups. So the fact that Tampa would be in that conversation would bruise the Islander dynasty ego from the 80s. So I'm happy that that didn't happen either. So congratulations, Colorado. It's been your first cup in 21 years. The last time they won was 2001. They do have a rabid fan base. I mean, whenever I go to Islander Av games, there's always a bunch of Avalanche fans. Obviously, you have a lot of this, the Stastny, Forsberg, Sakic jerseys, right? I see a lot of Claude Lemieux jerseys as well. I'm really happy for this team, right? I think this is an organization that, you talk about one of the more stable franchises, despite the lack of success, 5-10 years ago. They are a very good hockey team. And like I said, the last couple of years, they've been so close, yet so far. You have to go through that adversity. And I'm happy that they were able to see in real time how difficult it is to win. Seeing Landeskog in those final minutes drop into the ice, his skate blade coming out because he's taking shots off the foot. I mean, that is what it takes to win a championship. And that's the difference between a great team and the elite. And Tampa Bay learned that a couple years ago when they played the Columbus Blue Jackets, right? There wasn't enough sacrifice. There wasn't enough, scorn and blood drawn. Colorado, I think, kept that bulletin board material from last year, seeing what happened against the Vegas Golden Knights, and really, instead of blowing it off and saying, all right, we're going to go past that and move on from it, no. They let that stick. They let that cloud sit on them in training camp throughout the regular season this year, and it motivated them and kept them where they wanted to go, and ultimately led to them now lifting the Stanley Cup a mile high in Denver, Colorado. Guys, that's it for today's video. Like I said, congratulations to the Avalanche fans. It's been 20 years, so a lot of you probably weren't even alive for that, so congratulations to you guys. It's a pretty big thing. I also want to say a quick shout out to the fans here at Goal Line Hockey, guys. Thank you so much for following the channel, subscribing. If you aren't subscribed, make sure you do that as well. Quick little plug there. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, because the channel has been blowing up, and this year has been so good for Goal Line Hockey. And the only, as much as it is me making the videos and producing the content and uploading it, it does take a lot of time, but I enjoy doing it. And if you guys are supporting the channel, it makes it all that much easier. So thank you so much for watching, and I really do mean that. And I will see you again either in the off season, even though we don't have off seasons, in the off season. But if not, I will see you next year. Go Avs.